Okay, Team Impact, we are moving on today to lesson 3, comparing and ordering fractions. It's a little long lesson, so we're going to get into this thing. We're going to be utilizing a calculator today. So if you don't have one at home, jump on a computer and you're going to look for one online. I'm probably going to end up passing them out to everybody anyway. Anyway, let's get started here today. The calculator that we use in 6th grade is a TI-34 Multiview. It looks like this. I'll be using it for different functions today. So let's get rolling. A fraction bar is one way to represent division. This can be used to convert a fraction to a decimal by dividing the numerator by the denominator. You know that. We've talked about that. So A over B equals A divided by B, right? Which equals A divided by B. Top number, bottom number. Or 3/4 equals 3 divided by 4, which can be written as that. We can take a bigger number into a smaller number with decimals. It makes it easy. Okay? So let's just go down through this and read a little bit of what we have. First one up. 3/5 is really 3 divided by 5, which is 3 divided by 5. All right. And we could write 3, right, divided by 5. D there. All right, 5 divided by 4 is the same as 5 over 4. Top number goes inside, bottom number goes outside. Dividend, divisor. Dividend, divisor, numerator, denominator, dividend, divisor. Okay, I'm not going to worry about that. Next one up is 1 divided by 3. So if we wrote it like this, it would be 1 divided by 3, or it would be 1/3. Okay, all right. Last one, we're going to go off the verbal description here. Is 3 divided by 2, so it's 3 divided by 2, 3 divided by 2, and it's 3 seconds. So don't get confused with the improper fractions, okay? Just stick with it. Okay. Now, next piece, this is where we're going to start to use a calculator. Now, as you use the calculator, you're going to be accustomed more and more to these, all right? What your calculator does by simply hitting a button is going to divide it, all right? I'm not going to have you divide all those out, but we should know that 1/2 equals 5/10 by now, right? All right, so let's grab our calculator and go to work. I turned it on and I cleared it. Now, what I'm going to do is hit 1, all right, N over D 2. Now, if you just do that and hit enter, you get 1/2. Now, we want to switch that to a decimal. So you see this F to D and D to F, that double arrow? This will take a fraction to a decimal and a decimal to a fraction. But we have to get to the second function of that N over D. So hit second, N over D, and you'll end up with 5/10. Again, you should know that, right? We should know that 1/2 is 5/10. Just read the fraction here. 9/10, which is 9/10, or 0.9. 2/3 is a unique one. This is what we call a repeating decimal. Okay, so watch what happens when I switch it with my calculator. Okay, I'm going to put 2 N over D 3 and go to the right. I hit that right button to get my cursor out of that function. It was like that. I don't want to change it. I have to get it out of the fraction function. Now, I hit second N over D, and there it is. We get 6/10 repeating. Now, how do we write that? Well, we're going to write that in bar notation. So that's going to be 6/10 repeating. Repeating. That's a repeating decimal. That means that goes on forever. Okay? All right, next one up is 7/4. Again, let's use our calculator. Let's go there and hit second and over D, and we get 1 75 hundredths. So write it down. So the calculator is nice, certainly saves us a lot of time. We're moving on. Okay? Okay. Fractions can be placed on a number line or converted to a decimal to help them order. Okay? So 2/5. Ooh, okay. So let's take a look at these. Okay, the first one is 2/5. 2/5 is less than 1. How do I know that? Because 5/5 is 1, so that's less. So essentially, it's going to be between 0 and 1. So if we were to split this up into 5 equal sections, I would look for 2/5, which would be right there, and I'm going to put a letter A. Okay. -3 1/4. We did this yesterday. Here's 3, here's 4. So if I split this into 4 equal sections, this would be -3 1/2. 1/4, 2/4, 3/4. So this would be letter B, and it would go there. 2 1/10 is C. Between 2 and 3, if I split this into 10 equal sections, 1/10 would be the first one, and that would be letter C. 2 3/5, okay? 2 3/5 is again going to be between 2 and 3. Now, we split this into 10 sections, all right? If I was to scale this up to tenths, it would be 2 6/10. I multiplied them both by 2 to scale it up. So that's one way to do it. Since I broke it down, I'll just count out 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and put a plot. That's certainly one way to do it. I could have erased it all and cut it into 5 sections and counted 3 over. That would work too. The last one is letter E, -2 3/4. Here's 2, here's 3. Here's -2 1/2. Okay, so let's put it into 4 sections. 1, 2, 3, 4. I need -2 3/4. It's going to be right there, and it's going to be letter E. Okay, so it's important to be able to break down and put into intervals into each section. And we could split it into 100 sections if we needed to, but you know that would be a little tough in that section. But just getting the idea, you can split it up into anything you want. Okay, flip the page. Let me get a drink here. Excuse me. Okay. Fractions can be compared by using like denominators. denominators. Okay. So, this is a tough method. I don't really like this method because it takes the most time. I would rather use a calculator for this, which is probably what I'll go to, but let's talk about it anyway. First thing we're going to do is find the least common denominator. And then we're going to rename the fractions, right? We're going to multiply both the denominator and the numerator by the same number. And then we can order the fractions, and then we can write the original fraction. So we want to go back to the original piece, okay? So I'm going to use this technique on these fractions because I know the least common denominator of all 3 of those is going to be 12. Okay, so I'm going to rewrite those with a denominator of 12. Well, that already has 12, so I'm going to leave it as 11/12. Okay, I'm going to draw a line. I like a line in between them. All right, I'm going to scale that up. Well, what times 3 is 12? 4. 4 times 2 is 8. Draw a line. What times 6 is 12? 2. 2 times 5 is 10. Draw a line. What times 4 is 12? 3. 3 times 1 is 3. So since we have all common denominators, we just look at the numerators, right? And we want this greatest to least. That's important that you highlight, circle, underline, read that multiple times, because still go greatest to least and least to greatest, right? Okay, so the greatest one here is 11/12. The original fraction was 11/12. The next biggest one, and I like to cross that off, is 10/12, which was 5/6. The next biggest one is 2/3, and then 1/4. Okay? All right, number 7. I'm not even going to use a calculator here because I know the common denominator here is going to be 20. This goes into 20. They all go into 20. So let's rewrite. 320 times 4 times 4, draw our line. 3/4 times 5 times 5, draw the line. That's already 20, so I'm just going to rewrite it. And that's going to be 20 times 4, 17 times 4. I'm just going to come off and do my work over here and get 68/20. Okay, but the problem here is, is how do I compare this improper to these mixed numbers? So let's go ahead and switch that to a mixed number. So 3 times 20 is 60. I got 3 and 8/20. Now I can compare these, greatest to least. So when we compare mixed numbers, we have to compare starting with the whole number. They're all 3. So now I'm just going to go to the numerators. Well, here's 8, and that's clearly the biggest. So 17/5 is the biggest, right? Let's get rid of that stuff right there. The next one is going to be 3 1/4. We have to write the original values, okay? The next one is 3 1/5. Why? Because 4 is greater than 3. And then finally we end up with 3 3/20. Okay? So all good stuff there, right? Next one up, okay? I'll let you get caught up here for a second. I know it's a lot. Big lesson today. Number 8, order the following fractions from least to greatest using the number line. Okay. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to write down, all right, I'm going to write down the decimal value and see if you like that technique better. This was all common denominator. Here I'm going to utilize my calculator. All right, and I'm going to rewrite it under here. So I know -1/2, well, I don't need my calculator for that. I already know that that's 5/10, -5/10. I'm going to draw a line. 2/3, we switched that earlier, but let's do it again. 2 n/d3 to the right. And let's change that to a decimal. And what do we get? 6/10 repeating. That means those 6's go on forever. Now your calculator rounded at the end, it truncated. So what we're going to do is just write that in bar notation. And here we go. The third one is 1/4, and it's a negative. So let's just go ahead and do that like that. And let's come up here and change 1/4 to a fraction, a decimal. 1 n/d4, and there it is. Second n/d, and you see that it ends up being 25/100 right there. So let's write that down. And then finally, the last one is 3/5. Okay, let's go ahead and change that. 3 n/d5 to a decimal, and there it is. 6/10. So now, does that help me? Yeah, it does. Okay, it does. So the first thing I'm going to do is put an interval here and an interval here, right in the middle. So I know this is 5/10 negative, and this is 5/10 positive. I just split it in half. That helps me with some landmarks. Okay, so I have -5/10, all right, which was, which was letter A, right? So negative 5/10, and here's negative a fourth. We want this from least to greatest, so I'm going to write it down. Negative 1/2. That's the smallest number. The next smallest number is the next negative, right? And it's going to be negative 1/4. All right, I can see that it's going to be right here. That ended up being right there. Now I need to compare these two, and I have to be very careful, okay? And this number line really doesn't help me because these two numbers are very close together. So what I'm going to do is list those vertically. 6/10, this number, and under it I'm going to write this number, 6/10, repeating, and it goes forever. So now we can compare those two decimals, right? 6 and 6 is equal. The next number is a 0. That's a 6. So clearly that number is greater. 6/10 repeating. The original value was 2/3. Okay? We already used that. And then the last one would be 3/5, the greatest number. Okay? So that's how I would use a calculator to help me do that. Others, like the common denominator, and we could have got a common denominator there of, it looks like it could be, 30, 32, 40, maybe? I don't know. See, these common denominators are going to get bigger, so sometimes it's easier to go with a decimal. Let's go to number 9. Okay, excuse me, I get a drink. Number 9, order the rational numbers from least to greatest, and here we go. So, all right, getting a common denominator here is going to be tough, okay? So let's go ahead and change these to decimals, all right? And I'm going to use some of my work from the previous place, right? I know 1/4 was 0.25, right? So I'm going to write that down, negative 1.25. That's what that equaled. I'm going to use my previous work. Negative 1 1/3. I know that is a negative 1 point. And what we're going to do is just change 1/3 to a decimal. I know it's a negative 1, so I'm not going to enter the mixed number. I'm just going to change 1 n/d, 3, to a decimal. And you're going to notice, oops, sorry, hit the wrong button. You're going to notice that it's another repeating decimal. So the two most common repeating decimals that we'll deal with is 1/3 and 2/3. 1/3 is 3/10 repeating, and look how I wrote that. So this equals this. Next one is 1 3/5, so I'm just going to put 1 point, and I'm going to change 3/5 to a decimal, and you'll see that it equals 6/10. So 1.6 equals 1 3/5. The last one is 5/4, and let's change that to a decimal. So your calculator certainly will do that. There it is, second n/d, and here we go. So when we take a look at that, that is 1 25/100. Okay? So if we look to compare these decimals, what we're looking to do is looking at the biggest negative first, because we want it least to greatest. Okay? Well, 1 and 1 is equal. 2 and 3. Clearly that is the biggest negative, so it is the smallest. So I'm going to rewrite this as negative 1 1/3, the original value. Cross it off. And if I wanted to, this would be negative 1, this would be 1. That would be about right here. The next value is the next smallest one. Well, we only have another negative. It's 1.25. The original value was negative 1 1/4. Okay. The next value, well, let's compare these two decimals. 1 and 1, 6 and 2. 2 is smaller than 6. The original value was 5/4, and 1 3/5. Okay? So this gets a little tricky. We have to stay organized. Make sure that when you use them, you cross them off, but we write the original values down. All right, we're rolling on here. Okay, time's getting a little tight here. Let's go number 10 and 11. Sabrina is measuring different lengths of ribbon for a craft at art camp. Which list shows the ribbons in order from greatest to least? Okay, well, in this case, I see that the common denominator here is going to be 16. So let's just write all of those with a denominator of 16. All right, I'm just going to do that underneath. Times 2 times 2. 16 times 4 times 4. 16 times 8 times 8. Now, we want it greatest to least. Well, the biggest numerator, which is what I'm looking at now since I have a common denominator, is 12. All right, and that's the second fraction, so I'm looking for one with 5/8 first. And there it is. I really don't need to go any further, you see, because it's the only one with the greatest number first, so it is letter A. Okay, last one, number 11. The table below shows the progress that Harris's children have made on their reading app, which shows the progress from completed from least, most completed to least completed. So biggest to smallest. Easily, I think we should change those to a decimal. All right, so we can go both ways with this. Let's finish this up. The first one is 21 over 25. Let's switch that to a decimal. Oops, hit the wrong button. I just delete and I hit enter. That is 84 hundredths. Okay, 17/20. Let's change that to a decimal. Second n over d, and that equals 0.85. 5/6 to a decimal. Now this is going to be a repeating decimal. This is going to be a different kind of repeating decimal. Watch. Second n over d, and there it is. So this actually equals 83 hundredths with the 3 repeating. And I wrote that in bar notation like that. Now, biggest to smallest, 0.8, 0.8, 0.8. 0.5 is bigger than 4 or 3, so I'm looking for Mason first, and there he is. So a couple different ways to look at this. We can go decimals, we can go fractions, but it's up to you. I think a mixture of both is the best option. If we flip the page, this is your homework tonight. Comparing and ordering, independent practice. I put all 3 pages in the Schoology along with the full packet. Have a good day, guys.